Will be led by Council Member Mr. Lonnie Craig. Mr. Craig, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today, may we be open to others' ideas and beliefs, respectful of our differences, not threatened by them. May we grow in understanding of our own motives, knowing that people often act out of their fears. May we be a force for replacing fear with insight, helping us all to be patient and kind as we talk. Strength, real strength, can always find compromise. Working together, may we find a common ground, enable us to move forward with a shared purpose. May we see what is truly important that unites us, focusing on that to banish roadblocks of ego and fear. Today, may we be open to others' ideas and beliefs. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Craig, for those words. We are fortunate enough to have a scout troop, Troops 303, joining us. In fact, they meet in Virginia Beach, but we claim them as Chesapeake's own. Indeed. If I may ask these individuals to please come forward. Brian from Bishop Sullivan. He lives in Chesapeake. Philip, who goes to St. Matthew's, that's where they meet, right on the border there of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach. Kyle, who also goes to Hickory Middle School. Jonah, this young man is homeschooled, he's in 7th grade. And we have the young lady here who happens to be Sally Lee. Sally Lee, we appreciate you. She's the Communications Merit Badge. That's why they're here tonight. We have also Paul Peters, who's Kyle's dad, is here. And also we have, where is Mr. Lee with the camera?
He's coming in.
Take a picture. Go ahead, take the picture. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance first, and then you can take the pictures afterwards. Thank you. Just sit over there on the side. Gentlemen, would you please lead us in the pledge? We appreciate you so much.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Gentlemen, thank you. Mr. Lee, would you be kind enough and go ahead and take 3 shots with the camera? While he's doing that, would you, Madam Clerk, please call the roll?
Councilmember Craig.
Present.
Vice Mayor Dietrich Haag.
here.
Councilmember Ike.
Present.
Councilmember Kelly. Mayor Krasnoff.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Matheson.
Present.
Councilmember Ritter.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember West.
Here. Thank you so much for that. Next is there are absolutely no minutes to approve, but we did have a closed session at 4 o'clock. We do need the appropriate language for certification. Madam Attorney.
Yes, sir. Motion to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Dr. Dietrich.
So moved.
Dr. Ward. Thank you. Members, please prepare to vote. Please vote. Please record the vote.
Motion to certify the closed session discussion is adopted by a 9-0 vote.
Thank you so much. Before we begin with applicants, agents, citizens, and comments on public hearing items, last week this council did something that I have to tell you was extremely important and extremely timely. We changed the name of a park, which is very unusual, from the Cascade Boulevard Park to the James W. McNeil. We all know him as Reverend James W. McNeil. This young man, his compassion, his love, what an outstanding achievements that he has brought forth to not just to the community that he lives in over there, but also to the city as a whole. We appreciate him so much. I would ask that before I say Reverend James W. McNeil, so you can meet him in a moment, Ura Stallworth is the Vice President of Southside Civic League. It's good to see you, sir. Nice to have you here with us. And now with that, if I may ask, yes, sir, Mr. Reverend, the Honorable. Come on, young man. Move it. This young man, just north of 90. Reverend James W. McNeil, the namesake for our park here, right there. Thank you, sir. God bless you.
giving honor to the Lord and giving honor to all you all on the city council, management, and everything over the city. It's a great blessing for me to be here today, but not in the shape that the lady called me about, because she shook me up in Atlanta. I was in Atlanta the weekend. She called me in the room and telling me about it, and tears started coming out of my eyes. And somebody called me and told me, said, "Now, don't you start, because you ain't nothing but a waterhead no how." So what you should do is go in. But I want to thank you all very much. Thank you, and thank you, thank you. Because most of the time somebody mentioned to me in the convention, say I'm down in the convention the weekend, and they told me the most time when people, name put on something, they're dead. And somebody said, well, they're looking out for you before you die. I said, well, thank God for that. But I want to thank the Lord, because anything good that has been done, it's not me, it's God. I give him the credit every morning I wake up, and everywhere I go, because the scripture told me, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct my path. And I've gone that through the years. People have kicked me around, ducked me like a dog, but I still love them, do whatever. But the main thing in the city that I've been praying for, and God has done it, that we'd be on one accord with South and North and the whole Chesapeake. And we've done a beautiful job all over. You city council has worked with us. A lot of times it takes a little long time, but you've done a magnificent job, and I want to thank you and thank you for it. But I realize this, though. God had to direct your mind, and God directs each and one mind. See, when I go to bed, I ask God to direct my mind. If anybody enemy against me, all you got to do is shake his mind up and don't let me go. Don't let him change the mind on me, as long as you get me go with you. So saints, excuse me for calling you saint. Well, saints, I want to let you go, let you leave you now, because if I start talking, I get wound up. And y'all in the city council, so pray that I'll stand and be holy just like God told me to be. And I want to thank each and every one, and you'll be sure to pray for poor boy. And the park is for, and I'm glad you McNeil name up there, but there ain't nothing. The park was for everybody in the city and anyone around. And thank the Lord for that. Y'all pray for me. Mm-hmm.
Again, council, outstanding. Tremendous accomplishment for this young man out there. Next is applicants, agents, and citizens' comments on public hearing items. Madam Clerk, are there any citizens at this time who wish to speak prior to the presentation of public hearing items?
No, Mayor, not before the presentation of the items.
Thank you. Would you please call the first item?
Public hearing item A, RPUD 12-01, Dollar Tree PUD Project, Dollar Tree Inc. applicant, Williams Mullen agent, for a zoning reclassification of approximately 69.59 acres from M2 General Industrial District to PUDU Planned Unit Development Urban. The proposed mixed-use development would include up to 1,413 residential units, 500,000 square feet of retail space, 1 million square feet of office space, 250,000 square feet of civic and hotel space, and a minimum of 15% of the development will consist of open space. The development would be supported by 1.9 million square feet of parking decks and 3 parking lots located throughout the development. The property is bounded by Volvo Parkway on the south, Crossways Boulevard on the west, Eden Way on the north, and Executive Boulevard on the east in the Washington Borough. Planning Commission recommended approval with the development criteria dated June 28, 2013, and the Master Land Use Plan dated July 2, 2013. We have one speaker on this item, Mayor. It is a citizen in support of the application.
All right. It's my understanding, if before I call the citizen, which is certainly welcome, Mr. Manager, do you want to say something at this time?
Well,
As indicated in correspondence to the council, after the last meeting, I was contacted by a number of the councilmen who indicated that they would like to have a little bit more time to review this, and I did talk to Mr. Bob Sasser, who's the president and CEO of Dollar Tree, and although he indicated that he was anxious to go forward, indicated he was willing to consent to a continuance until September 17th.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. I appreciate Mr. Burles Saunders being here as well. Thank you, sir, for all you're doing. With that being said, would you please call that citizen who wished to speak?
Michael Saras, 149 Thrasher Road, representing North Battlefield Civic League, to speak in support of public hearing item A.
It's good to see you again, Mr. Saras. It's been 20 years.
It's been 20 years. Thank you, Mayor Krasnoff, council members, the president of the Civic League, North Battlefield Civic League, currently a resident of the Essex Meadows community. Once you're assigned a civic duty, sometimes it sticks with you. I wanted to find out just my concern about this. I've seen the signs up there, and being in that area, and I know that we've got, and pardon me if my numbers are incorrect, but there must be like 50,000, if I'm not incorrect, 50,000 employees working in the North Greenbrier area. I've understood that at some point it's even exceeded downtown Norfolk's workforce. And what we're seeing in a community up there bordering this highly commercial and office and hotel district up there, what we're seeing is a lot of traffic on Volvo Parkway. A lot of traffic and congestion is starting to build. It's not really been a problem. We understand. I'm all for the proposal. I think development is great. It's in the TIF district. I think that's a great moving plan. But I also just want to make sure that as you guys may continue this, I just want to make sure that you guys consider the potential traffic for the area and the congestion in the area. I know it's always a problem. It's always a challenge to deal with. But we would like to see that we continue the flow of traffic in and out of this area. And I understand with the community, or with the amount of planned residential units, there stands to be a lot more people coming and going in and out of this area. So it's just a concern at this point. We support it conditionally with some consideration for the traffic flow.
Thank you. Appreciate it, and it's good seeing you again, sir. Dr. Dietrich.
Yes, motion to continue RPUD 1201.
To September 17th, sir.
September 17th.
2013. Ms. Kelly, please.
Yes, second that motion.
Yes. Members, please prepare to vote. Please vote. Please record the vote.
Motion to continue public hearing item A, RPUD-1201, Dollar Tree PUD, to the September 17th, 2013 council meeting is adopted by a 9-0 vote.
Thank you. Item B, please read that into the record.
Public hearing item B, RC 13-02, Centerville Commons Expansion Project, Centerville 40 LLC applicant, Wooten and Shattuck PLC agent, for conditional zoning reclassification of approximately 19.9 acres from A1 Agricultural District and R15S Residential District to R8 Residential District for the development of single-family homes. Property is located at 1728 Elbow Road in the Washington Borough. Planning Commission recommended approval with the proffers listed in the official agenda. We have one speaker in this item, Mayor. It is the agent for the applicant in support of the application.
Mr. Grady Palmer.
Do you wish to call the applicant?
Absolutely.
Grady Palmer, 860 Greenbrier Circle, representing Centerville 40 LLC, in support of public hearing item B.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to speak.
It's my pleasure.
I'll be brief. My name is Grady Palmer. My business address is 860 Greenbrier Circle, Suite 401 here in the city of Chesapeake. Pleased to present this application to you tonight, and I'll keep it brief. This is a rezoning classification to R8 to allow the expansion of a very nice project that's currently under construction at the intersection of Elbow Road and Centerville Turnpike. And as you will recall, Council approved that project unanimously in 2011, and so this would be an expansion of that project by about 50 lots. The rezoning passes all level of service tests. In fact, one interesting point here that you don't see a lot, the proffer in this case for the intersection of Elbow Road and Centerville Turnpike actually increases the flow of traffic and improves the level of service in the PM rush hour time. And so I think that's a nice improvement this project was able to commit to. And so in conclusion, the project is fully committed to the schools with cash proffers, and we ask for your support on this, and we believe this will be a great addition to what is already a premier neighborhood in Chesapeake. Thank
How's
you.
the new baby doing?
He's sleeping, and so we are sane. Thank you.
Dr. Dietrich, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, there are a few items here that I think need to be clarified, and rather than doing them on the floor, I would make a motion for a 30-day continuance.
Ms. Kelly,
I'll second that motion.
is there any further discussion, please, for the September 17, 2013? Hearing none. Yes, Dr. West?
I'm not sure, are we on the Centerville Commons expansion?
Yes, sir.
I didn't know there were issues. I guess we all, did I miss something?
Dr. Dietrich?
No, I don't know whether they're shared by all council members, but I do have some concerns that I want to discuss with the manager and the attorney, so I'd appreciate that indulgence.
Thank you. With that being said, members, please prepare to vote. Please vote. Please record the vote.
Motion to continue public hearing item B, RC 13-02, to the September 17, 2013 council meeting. It's adopted by a 9-0 vote.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Public hearing item C, RC 13-05, Brooks Run Project, Titan Development LLC applicant, Wooten and Shattuck PLC agent for conditional zoning reclassification of approximately 50.1 acres from A1 Agricultural District to R15S Residential District for the development of single-family homes. The property is located adjacent to Old Mill Run subdivision on the west side in the Deep Creek Borough. Planning Commission recommended approval with the proffers listed in the official agenda, and we do have 3 speakers on this item, Mayor, 2 in support, 1 in opposition.
And how did the Planning Commission vote on this?
The Planning Commission recommended approval with the proffers listed in the official agenda.
Okay, thank you. With that being said, call the speakers, please.
The first speaker is Grady Palmer, 860 Greenbrier Circle, representing Titan Development, LLC, followed by Pete Burkheimer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Grady Palmer. My business address is 860 Greenbrier Circle, Suite 401, here in the city of Chesapeake. I'm here tonight as the agent for this application, and the clients are here in the audience, and they're available to answer questions. This is the same property that was submitted for rezoning in 2007 as what we call Phase 3 of the Old Mill Run subdivision, and you can see on the map in front of you the street network and the lots that are coming off those streets off of Weiss Lane, and that's what we refer to as Phase 1 and Phase 2. The construction for those started in 2007, about the time that these 2 parcels were submitted for rezoning. That rezoning didn't move forward as it was timed about the time that the housing market collapsed. But essentially, this application that's before you tonight is the same application, at least in terms of zoning. It would propose as an R15S zoning classification, which would match the zoning and the lot sizes on average in the existing Phase 1 and Phase 2 of Old Mill Run. Now, we met with the neighbors in Old Mill Run, and these are always the hard ones when you're building in the back of an established neighborhood, and residents always have valid concerns about the impacts that they'll experience. So we met with the neighbors on June 22nd, and that's a Saturday. We met with them, and they were gracious enough to come out on a Saturday morning to meet with us. And the primary concerns that we heard from the neighbors were the traffic generation off of this project, and it would come through their neighborhoods. And of course, the streets are set up to handle that traffic, and so those were certainly understandable concerns. One of the other things that we heard from the neighbors was the concern not just from residential traffic, but construction vehicle traffic that would come through their neighborhood. And I'm pleased to announce tonight that we have reached an agreement with the property owner that's to the southwest of this property to bring our construction vehicle traffic down Weiss Lane into that farmland. There's an existing farm road that runs essentially along the property line, and then we'll be able to bring our construction vehicles into the back of Brooks Run and bypass the neighborhood. And that we felt like that was an accommodation that was worthy of us in our efforts to try to secure. And the property owner, the adjacent property owner, was gracious enough to agree to that. And so that's something that we really feel is a positive for the community there, that we really wanted to try to minimize those impacts. Now, couple of other commitments that this project is able to bring to you tonight, and Mr. Berkheimer will speak a little bit more in detail about the improvements to Weiss Lane. But Weiss Lane, you all know, is a very nice street in Deep Creek, and I know the people out there have a real affection for it. And we attempted to balance the need to get Weiss Lane to an acceptable width while not altering the character of Weiss Lane. And so we did that by coming to the conclusion that 22 feet made a lot of sense to us to widen, to get the pavement width out, to really provide some vehicular safety there, while trying to maintain the character, the existing character of Weiss Lane. There's also some intersection improvements at Old Mill Road and Weiss Lane, a turn lane and a right taper to help make that intersection function a little better than it does now. One of the nice things about this project that I've been looking forward to saying here in public is that this is the only rezoning application that I've ever seen where the students that would be generated by this rezoning are real positive for the schools, and I've never seen that before. But this is one of the Deep Creek schools where the Deep Creek High is at 82%. Hugo Owens Middle School is at 73% capacity. This project, if approved, would generate about 17 additional high school students, and that would really help Deep Creek provide a little bit more in terms of academic services. And so I think that's a nice thing to be able to say. I certainly understand the level of service policy doesn't exactly work that way, but it's nice to see a benefit from student generation. Now, you know from reading your packages that staff recommended denial of this project, and that's a literal application of level of service policy, and you all know, and everybody in Deep Creek knows, the condition of the intersection of George Washington and Old Mill Road. And particularly for those who are coming into Deep Creek south on George Washington, try to make that left-hand turn to cross the Deep Creek Bridge, and I think everybody in their right mind will agree that that's a real mess at night. One of the things that really works for this application is our vehicular traffic, to the extent that it's coming down George Washington, will be turning right onto Old Mill Road. And so those residents that experience the backup now, our traffic would be moving in a right-hand direction onto Old Mill Road. And so, and that's the interesting thing. Residents don't experience policy. Residents experience reality. And the reality of this project, while it technically fails a level of service for that intersection, the reality is all of the traffic in the PM, which is the worst movement on southbound George Washington, this traffic will be taking a right on Old Mill Road to the extent that these residents are using that. Now, there is an option that people from this development may use the Gallberry Road connection to Old Mill Road, and that way bypassing that evening commute down in there. So I think that's an important reality to keep in mind about this application. Now, this is a master plan community, at least what we term as a master plan community. You see two stub streets, the utilities are in place for this project, and it's really a natural extension and a completion of the Old Mill Run subdivision. And so we think it's a good time for this project to be rezoned. So we ask for your approval of the rezoning, and you'll also see in your package there is a request to expand the utility franchise area. And that really is almost a technical component of this application. The pump station already serves the property or could serve the property, and it's within the HRSD service area. So from that perspective, again, it's master plan, and we think this is the right time to do this. And so having said all that, I'll ask for your support, and I'll stand by for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grady. Next one, Mr. Grady Palmer. Mr. Palmer, I apologize for that.
The next speaker is Pete
You said there were
Berkheimer.
three speakers and one was
Yes.
opposed. Would you please call the contrary person's opinion
Sure.
first before Mr. Berkheimer?
Sure. Mr. David Hart, 3232 Brown Road, representing self, to speak in opposition to public hearing item C.
Mr. Hart, good evening, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen, councilman. My name is David Hart. I reside at 3232 Brown Road, Chesapeake. I have the farm on the top part of the map, just off to the left side of Brown Road. All the drainage from this development and the previous developments, there's 400 houses built in the last 7 or 8 years there, and all the drainage comes out of those developments down around my property and down towards the Elizabeth River. And I have worked with the city and developers for easements across my property, across the front, all the way around the back and down the sides. Well, my complaint about this approval of this without some kind of proffer or something, all the drainage bottles up in my corner of my property. It doesn't, we got a 30-foot ditch with a 10-foot bottom, and when it gets down to the end of my property, it goes to a 4-foot ditch, and it backs up on my property and makes it, a lot of it unusable there. And I would like that, it's not far from the edge of my property down to the Elizabeth River down there, not the southern branch, and it goes into tidal water. So I don't think it would be out of range to ask that be improved with side ditches, not just the regular bottom 4-foot wide. Sometimes it's 8 foot in the woods there. To go down there, it should have a wider bottom and some banks developed for it. I'm not against the houses being built in there. I was never against any of the houses that were. Miller's Run, which was on the other side of me, dumps their water into my property also. And Phase 1 and Phase 2 and Phase 3 of Old Mill Run, they drop their water, and 90% of their water down around my property. And I think it's really, I would really like y'all's help to alleviate that problem down there. And I would like to be able to rebut if the city has, since the Planning Commission approved this, they have sent workers down the ditch line and chopped out bushes that were hanging over the ditch beyond my property, which helped some. I talked with them today, and they said it needed a little more work down there, which I had pointed out to them, and they would send people in there to do that. But we need a wider place so that will just leave my property. I felt I've cooperated fully with everybody, all the developments, and they should improve that down to Old Mill Road, from my property down to Old Mill Road. I would like to rebut if the city, for the rest of my time, if the city has a comment either way, I would like to be able to come back and speak about their progress or their proposals or something to that effect.
All right, thanks. Anything else you want to say? You still have total 5 minutes.
No, that's fine.
All right, thank you, sir, for your time. Appreciate you. Next speaker, please.
Pete Berkheimer, 3351 Stone Shore Road, Virginia Beach, representing Titan Development, LLC, to speak in support of public hearing item C.
Good evening, sir. It's nice to see you, as always.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Mr. Baker, and staff. I'm Pete Berkheimer, practicing at 3351 Stone Shore Road, as stated. Allow me to take about 10 seconds to put a different hat on and join my fellow South Norfolk Revitalization Commission members in thanking you for your action in honoring Reverend McNeil in that way. Now, back to my clock. As Mr. Palmer noted, we have taken on the challenge of Weiss Lane. And I want to dwell on that. It's an important thing. Because Old Mill Run, the subdivision that's already built today, was by right zoning. It was, when the developers came to develop that, it was already zoned R15S. There was no mechanism to compel them to widen Weiss Lane off-site. I'm talking about from the northeast corner of that old subdivision, half a mile out to Old Mill Road. That's the part that needs the work. Parts of that road are 20 feet wide. There's one little stretch in the S-curve there that gets as narrow as 17 and a half feet. That's just too narrow. It's an old country road, but it's already carrying several hundred lots worth of traffic. We've talked to development and permits, and as Mr. Palmer noted, we agree that a 22-foot width is the appropriate width for Weiss Lane. It'll still be a kind of country-looking two-lane road, but if a big SUV meets a school bus head-on, nobody's sweating bullets at 22. Not so much at 17 and a half. We have committed to that. We proffered that from the outset, that we would come in at our expense within the existing right-of-way that's there and make that improvement all the way from Old Mill Run down to Weiss Lane. This is an off-site improvement. Additionally, They weren't made, they meaning Old Mill Run, wasn't made to provide a left turn lane for traffic coming from the 7-Eleven direction from the east to turn onto Weiss Lane. We will do that as well. We expect the total dollar value of those improvements to be in the $350,000, $375,000 range, which is around 2.5 times what our cash road proffer would have been if we chose to just go the cash proffer route and let y'all do whatever you wanted to with that road money. That's sort of a theme of how we try to approach any development, and particularly this one. We come in, we look at the impacts that we have, and we do everything within our reasonable power to offset them. Mr. Palmer noted with some pride that we recommended and our client was able to make an arrangement with the adjacent farmer to be able to divert or bypass the construction phase traffic. That's development construction and home construction around the Old Mill Run subdivision. We might not have succeeded in that. I wasn't sure we would, but persistence paid off and we were able to accomplish that. So if there's any questions, please ask me, but I want to make sure you understand the magnitude of that proffer and why we backed it out of the cash proffer so that we would have enough funds to do a good job to take care with our 100 lots worth of development what the 200 lots of Old Mill Run probably should have done if you'd had the tools to get them to do it. Moving on, don't forget, please, the utility franchise area expansion that's part of this. Even though the entirety of this property lies within the pump station service area of Old Mill Run's pump station and well within the HRSD service area, still there's about maybe 20-25% of the back parcel lies outside the arc of your public utilities franchise area, and we would ask you, if you see fit to approve this, and we hope you do, to vote to include that or add that in to the public utilities franchise area. It's already in your 2026 utility franchise area, meaning that you knew you were going to do it at some point. We ask that this be that point. We know that your comp plan work is coming up soon, and that includes the master transportation plan. The current plan and the one before it, the staff draft of the current plan and the one that was adopted in '05, shows a thing called Gallberry Road Extended sort of slashing through here. That was very excellent, Ms. Shea. The green and black dashed line is Gallberry Road Extended. You can see the GAL of it on the top of that sheet. That would be a 4-lane divided road. I think that ship has pretty much already sailed. I don't see how you bring that through Old Mill Run. And we would simply ask that when the time is right that you remove that road from the master transportation plan altogether, or in the alternative, downshift it from a 4-lane divided road to a 60-foot collector street and let Herring Way serve that role. It's already built through Old Mill Run, and we've set aside for it in our planning to continue through Brooks Run. But for heaven's sakes, please, not a 4-lane divided. That was a plaintive cry from the Old Mill Run residents, and we certainly echo that. I want to spend the rest of my time talking about the level of service deficiency. Mr. Palmer did a good job of framing it. Let me make it a little simpler. As a resident of Deep Creek, the PM peak hour is when that intersection will get in trouble, get below level of service D in the out years when Culpeper Landing approaches build-out. And when an intersection fails, it's because some of its movements failed. The movements that will fail are the southbound George Washington turning left to go across the bridge, as he said, and the northbound movement coming out of Mill Creek. The key point is Brooks Run will not contribute to those movements. We're not going to be what makes it fail. If you don't approve us tonight, it's going to do everything that it would do otherwise. If Culpeper Landing builds out, it'll go below level D, whether you approve us or not. On a more personal level, I think about myself getting off interstate to go down to Old Mill Road to turn and go up to my home. Thanks to the proffer of Culpeper Landing and the things that this council did to facilitate that getting done, we now have 2 southbound lanes. But there's only one left turn across the bridge, so everybody who's going to go left to go east across the drawbridge stays in the inner lane. Those of us happy enough to be going straight or turning right at the 7-Eleven get in the right-hand lane, and I've never seen it backed up. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you, thank you, thank you for working with Culpeper Landing to make that possible. That is the path that Brooks Run traffic will take. It will not foul up the PM peak hour movement. Now, the letter of your policy says the intersection as a whole still fails, but it fails or goes below level D because of the future phases of Culpeper Landing, not because of Brooks Run. And with that in mind, we simply ask you to accept that as a failure of the letter, but not of the spirit of that policy, and vote to approve this instead. It's a great little project. We ask you to approve it. And for my friend, Mr. Hart, I would respectfully suggest that y'all know my track record on storm drainage. You know we will drain this property properly. We will use more ponds per acre than Old Mill Run did to hold back our flows so that the net flow coming onto him is no greater than what it was. I think what he really needs is effective maintenance of Brown's Run and the part of his property that connects to Brown's Run. There is a little bit of a choke point there. If it needed fixing, it should have been fixed with either Miller's Run or with this project. We didn't proffer anything to it because, quite frankly, for a little 100-lot project, we're pretty busy fixing Weiss Lane and putting a left turn lane from Old Mill onto Weiss. We would ask you respectfully to let us concentrate on that. And if Public Works' drainage division or stormwater division needs to do a little work on that last few hundred feet of Brown's Run, where it turns and goes from heading kind of westward to heading northward to go under Old Mill Run into Deep Creek, then do that as the needed maintenance project. I mean, these subdivisions are 8 to 10 years old, Miller's Run and Old Mill Run. It's not unreasonable that they're due for some maintenance in order to make sure they perform as their previous engineering designers designed them to work. With that, again, we ask for your approval of this project. It's odd that I would dare call a project right on the edge of the yellow area on the comp plan that's suitable for development as an infill project, but it really kind of is, because Old Mill Run set it up with street stubs and water stubs and sewer stubs. It's ready, it's positioned for development, and we would like you to approve for this project to go forward.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank you.
that. Before I ask for a motion, Mr. Manager, you heard Mr. Hart and Mr. Berkheim. If you could somehow look at Public Works and see how we can potentially maintain and do something, if at all positive, for the drainage in this area that seems to narrow down to a 4-foot ditch. That being said, a motion is now in order.
Move approval of RC 1305, also to include the northern edge of the property for the utilities franchise.
That's called expansion, correct? Is that what you're asking for, Mr. Ike?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there a second, please?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Matheson.
Does that include the proffers also?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Yes. Ms. Ritter, please.
Okay. I'm sorry that this didn't get better addressed perhaps at the Planning Commission level, but I think it brings up a point, and perhaps somebody is here from Public Works or maybe Mr. Tate who could answer this, as to whether or not Brown's Run is a maintenance project or is it a construction project.
Let me do this. Mr. Manager, is that all right? Do you have someone to answer the councilwoman's concerns and thoughts?
If Mr. Tate's capable of addressing it, yeah.
Mr. Tate, it's always good to see you. Mr. Tate, Ms. Ritter has a question for you, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Tate, do you want me to repeat that?
No, I actually got it this time. Brown's Run was a ditch that existed long before the adjoining developments came in, and much like a road improvement, people who developed adjacent to it widened out the ditch to construct the ultimate width of the ditch. So in some areas, the ditch hadn't been widened to its ultimate width. But in those areas, unlike traffic, there's no additional water flowing because they've used stormwater management techniques, mainly stormwater ponds, to keep the water flowing similar to the pre-development condition. So that's a long way of saying the water flowing in the ditch probably resembles the water that was flowing in the ditch prior to development, and therefore the developments haven't created a need to widen it. However, there has been an increased growth of vegetation. There's probably been some silt that's deposited. After the Planning Commission meeting, I talked with Public Works representatives and Stormwater. They've begun working with Mr. Hart to identify some of the areas that need maintenance. And those maintenance, some of it's been addressed, and they know there's additional maintenance that's required. But we don't anticipate this project creates the need to expand Browns Run.
Are you sure?
No, not as a result of this development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further questions? If not, we do have a motion by Mr. Ike, second by Mr. Matheson. All members, please prepare to vote, including all the proffers. Please vote. Please record the vote. Madam Clerk.
Motion to approve public hearing item C, RC 13-05, with proffers and the franchise area expansion. It's adopted by a 9-0 vote.
That's nice. Items D and E doesn't even need to get read in the record. Is that correct, Madam Attorney?
That's correct. It was not advertised, so the city council cannot act on the matter.
All right, with that, item F.
Public hearing item F, RC 13-11, Point Harbor Community Church Project, Point Harbor Community Church applicant, Troutman Sanders LLP agent, for conditional zoning reclassification of approximately 5.121 acres from R15S Residential District to AC Assembly Center District to continue the existing church use in a more appropriate zoning classification. The property is located at 2705 Taylor Road and 2517 North Elizabeth Harbor Drive in the Western Branch Borough. Planning Commission recommended approval with the proffers listed in the official agenda. We have one speaker on this item, Mayor. It is the agent for the applicant who is available for questions.
Dr. Vichike?
Yes, motion to approve RC 1311 with proffers.
Dr. Ward?
Second.
Thank you. Members, please prepare to vote. Please vote. Please record the vote.
Motion to approve public hearing item F, RC 13-11 with proffers is adopted by a 9-0 vote.
Next item, please.
Public hearing item G, TAZ 13-02, an ordinance amending Appendix A of the Chesapeake City Code entitled Zoning, Article 6, Section 6-203, and Article 14, Section 14-705, to remove the square footage limitation on commercial vehicles in residential districts. The Planning Commission recommended denial. We have 7 speakers on this item, Mayor, 3 in support, 4 in opposition.
Let's do it. Call them alternating in terms of their voice and opinion.
The first speaker is Jessica Coiner, 709 Tallahassee Drive, representing Signature Pools, to speak in support of TAZ 13-02, followed by Tamika Quinn.
Thank you for all you do for those wonderful people, young lady.
Thank you, sir.
Please identify your name and address, please, and then go ahead.
It's Jessica Quinner, 709 Tallahassee Drive,
Yes,
Chesapeake.
you might have to speak into the mic. So pull the mic down towards you. There you go. I apologize for interrupting you.
Good evening, Mayor Krasnoff, Vice Mayor DeTriquet, esteemed council members, and City Manager Mr. Baker. My name is Jessica Quinner. My husband and I own a small garage startup small business called Signature Pools. The current sign footage limitation affects everyone in our city, from people like me, a small business owner, to large corporations, employees of a company, companies that install vehicle signage, and city taxable income for the companies that install the vehicle signage. Every business has to start somewhere, and the majority of which are started in home garages. Some of the more notable garage startup companies are Harley-Davidson, Yankee Candle, Mattel, Google, and Disney. Vehicle signage is one of the most affordable ways a small business like myself can advertise who and what they are on a vehicle that they already own and keep it at a residence that they already own to help their young company grow. Using magnets is something I shied away from because they're very inexpensive, the fine print is very hard to read, and it makes your company look inexpensive, which is what the current statute says that we should have. Wraps and cutouts allow for pictures, art, and wording to help advertise your business that are works of art in themselves. I get stopped at least once a week by a resident in Chesapeake that compliments me on my truck and how beautiful it is, whether I'm taking my 6-year-old child to school in the fall or day camp in the summer or grocery shopping on the weekend or using it for work. If this limitation ordinance stays in place, I will be forced into a difficult situation with my company. I cannot afford a commercial property that would take the tune of $2,400 to $3,000 a month just to store 4 of my vehicles for overnight. Then I would have to purchase another vehicle just so I could store it at my house and drive to the commercial property to pick up my truck for work. Hundreds to thousands are currently in violation of this ordinance, such as real estate agents, cable companies, ladies who sell Avon, are also affected, and so on. All of these Chesapeake residents of small businesses will be faced with the same financial hardship. Employees of companies will also be affected. When an employee is given the privilege of taking a company vehicle home, it saves that family money every month. For my employees, it saves them anywhere between $100 and $200 a month, which equates out to about $1,200 to $2,400 a year that is freed up in their household to then in turn spend in other city businesses in Chesapeake. And helps keep our local economy strong from the ground up. With the current limitation ordinance, it places undue hardship on any employee of any company that lives in Chesapeake and may cause slow growth for family or for blue-collar families that now have to put gas in their cars because they are unable to bring company vehicles home. Signage companies are also affected. Many of my friends would like to buy a wrap for their home company, but they will not due to the current limitations for signage. Each wrap can cost between $700 and $3,000 that a signage company like D Signs, AG Wraps, or Charles Hackworth would charge. I have 2 personal friends that have garage startups that will not wrap their vehicle due to fear that they will not be able to park in their driveways. Between the 2 of them, they have 4 vehicles. None of these vehicle wrap companies will see this revenue anywhere between $2,800 and $12,000 just for those 4 vehicles due to this fear. I humbly ask Council, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, and Mr. Manager to remove the current vehicle sign square footage limitation that is in place so that small garage startup businesses, the backbone of any economy, will not be forced into this tremendous financial burden. Removal of this square foot ordinance so that employees of a company are not punished financially and can bring their vehicles home. Remove this ordinance so that companies can make money installing these cutouts and wraps, which only means the city will have more revenue to tax. Please remove this square foot ordinance so that we can move forward to a more prosperous city at every business level. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, young lady. Next 2 speakers, please.
Okay, Mayor, before I call the next speaker, let me correct. We have 2 speakers in support, 5 speakers in opposition.
I call the next speaker
The
who
next
has the
speaker
contract.
is Tamika Quinn, 410 Lodge Cove, representing Self, to speak in opposition to public hearing item G, followed by Michael Soros.
Hello, young lady. It's good to see you again.
Hi. Thank you for having me. This is my first city council meeting, and so I just appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with everyone. My name is Tamika Quinn. I'm a small business owner. I own Pink Carpet Glam Girl in Chesapeake. Our address is 410 Lodge Cove. That's also my residence. I'm going to try to do this and not get emotional here. My husband and I were both prior Navy. We served our country knowing that, we would make a difference in our communities. When my husband passed away in December of 2011, I didn't want to go back to a job and be away from my children, who are both one in middle school now and one going to high school. And so this business that I developed was so that I could stay home and be with my children. To have this type of ordinance puts me in a bind, just like the young lady before me talked about financially. I'm able to pay my mortgage and also run my business from my home. And so my vehicles, which you may have seen, a bright pink glam van right here in Deep Creek that I use for my business, is parked in my driveway. And so to think that I would now not be able to park my van that I use for my business in my home, it makes no sense to me at all. And so I'm here tonight asking that you please remove those limitations, because as a small business owner, that will put a huge hindrance on my family. I know that I would not be able to pay to park my vehicle somewhere else and still run my business from home. It's not even an option for me. And so I'm here praying and hoping that this is not something that you move forward with, keeping those limitations where we can't, as small business owners, as home-based business owners, park our vehicles that are wrapped. I spent over $3,000 getting my van wrapped to make sure that here I'm going to invest in my business and pursue the American dream of business ownership and do it with as little out-of-pocket expenses as possible. And so that is my plea, that is my request, that you remove those limitations from the signage amount or the size that can go on our vehicles and still be parked at our residence.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your service to our country, too.
Charles Ferguson, 3017 Myers Green, representing Myers Plantation, to speak in opposition to public hearing item G.
And you're also called Michael Saris as well?
Yes, Mayor, given the confusion on
I
the last,
gotcha.
I switched it.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Charlie Ferguson. I live at 3017 Myers Green in Chesapeake. And as I get started, and I just wanted to mention one other thing. I spoke with Officer Hayes of 4th Precinct today and learned they made substantial progress with some burglaries that have been going on there. And they're working to get property to citizens. And so I just wanted to mention that tonight. There's good work going on with the police department there in 4th Precinct. I'm the president of Myers Plantation Homeowner Association and have worked with neighborhood representatives from 16 other neighborhoods to consider the impact the ordinance change could have on city residential neighborhoods. Thanks to Ms. Karen Schaefer for providing citizens a chance to comment, and to Mr. John King for his efforts to address my questions. We're for business, for citizens, and for a balanced approach of commercial vehicle parking that does not impact neighborhood character. I ask that you vote to oppose the proposed ordinance language to eliminate square footage sign limitations on commercial vehicles parked in residential neighborhoods. That's what the motion's about tonight, as I understand it. But I would not oppose language to modify it to 6 foot or something that's reasonable. My letter to Ms. Schaefer, the one that's in your packet tonight, provided a line-by-line analysis of the current ordinance. The discussion with her and John King helped me to develop answers to questions that citizens were asking me. Some answers were developed from discussion with other city leaders. A second letter from me, also in your packet, provided the rationale to support not allowing an ordinance change as proposed, and included the questions and answers just mentioned. Though we know the city planners and the Planning Commission recommended against the proposal, some of you may not be convinced of any risk and may see comfort in the idea that the planning staff noted that they did not see increased enforcement risk. I'll provide an overview, then offer some code examples to demonstrate why the current ordinance provides better balance and better service to citizens and business owners than the risk of the current proposal. And I passed out a chart just a few moments ago, and I hope we have one to display. Should be one there. If not, I've got an additional copy here. So in any case, the slide that's in front of you right now talks about the decision that you need to make tonight, but it enforces or puts focus on the enforcement consequence example. And by saying that, we know that citizen reporting is key in this initiative. If there's a violation, how does the city know or how do the police know? It's really through the enforcement of citizens. And so if it happens that a citizen were to call and say, hey, I can't see my children playing because of this vehicle, the police might ask, well, what's the parking violation? Or the zoning administrator might ask, what is the zoning violation? But from a citizen perspective, it's a difficult thing to know. In looking at the idea of commercial or non-commercial vehicles, which this ordinance is about, specifically commercial vehicles, and looking at the diagram with the picture here, John King explained that the ordinance is complicated and requires historic context and interpretation, so don't consider the ordinance as written as a complete answer. And so rather than just focusing on the ordinance as written, I researched the city code to get some better understanding of what it says in terms of commercial and non-commercial vehicles. In thinking about that distinction, it makes a difference whether somebody can or somebody cannot park a vehicle on the property. In thinking about property, it makes a difference whether it's their residence or possibly some other portion of the city, to include just down the street. It makes a difference. The type of display on the vehicle makes a difference. If it's advertising and you can identify a company or business, phone number, those sort of things that we normally see, we might understand that as as advertising, and that's in the code. But if it's some kind of public service announcement or some sort of belief, drink more milk, that's up for interpretation. It's difficult to know what the answer is. And that introduces the challenge of non-advertising but other forms of protected speech, and the legal challenge that could come about if groups like Code Pink were to be cheering when American soldiers are killed, or when other things like that happen. There needs to be some kind of reasonable approach to signs, because if it can be taken to the neighborhoods, your families and your children are seeing it. The other aspect from a taxpayer perspective of this getting rid of all limitation as it reports to signs is that taxpayers pay the enforcement cost. It sounds like I'm at the end of my time, but I've got some other information that I'd like to share and hope that somebody would call me forward for some more
Mr. Ferguson, can you say it in about a minute?
Yes, sir.
All right, if you could do it in a minute, go for it.
I can. Home businesses, car sales, corner visibility, garage sales, prohibited businesses each appear in the city code. Each have limitations that relates to signage. Each were done for a purpose. What I'm asking the council to recognize is that signs matter. Advertising matters. The existing code is consistent with what we have currently. And so just to change this portion of it mitigates the work the council's done over many years. I thank you for your time and look forward to any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. Next two speakers, please.
The next speaker is Michael Saros, 149 Thrasher Road, representing Saros Environmental LLC, to speak in support of public hearing item G, followed by Lisa Sechtman.
Thank you again. Thank you again, Mayor Krasnoff, council members. I don't have anything fancy to say about this because it just recently came across my attention, and I don't have anything. I had a write-up here, and I think I'm just going to speak from the heart on this because I'm a startup business. Well, I'm a professional business. I don't do advertisement. I'm a consultant, a geologic consultant, but my wife is doing a startup business, and I feel for the two ladies that spoke at first. My position on this, I'm confused. I mean, if I can speak frankly, I'm a little bit confused on it. What I would like for you guys to consider is a couple of things. While I agree with limits and I agree with certain things that might make the neighborhoods unsightly or it might have some quote-unquote safety issues, as the gentleman had pointed out, from a startup business owner, somebody that wants to get out of a job situation, or my wife who is working minimum wage for 20 years, God love her, and is tired of working for someone else for pennies on the dollar. She wants to do something for herself for a change. And the best way to advertise to her to get a service-based clientele is to advertise cheaply using vehicle. It's almost like it's the way to get her business out. Websites are great, but there's just no way to do it without reason, without, those startup costs can be very prohibitive, as the lady had pointed out. An ordinance that reduces or significantly restricts advertisement for a vehicle. And we're not talking about a fleet vehicle. We're talking about a personal vehicle that you're doing some advertisement. I've seen the magnetic signs. Sometimes they fall off. They fall off in ice and storm events. They don't necessarily always work. I've seen the big decals, the car wraps. While they're very nice and they're very articulate and they're very artistry, sometimes they seem a little bit large. I'm just asking you guys kind of keep things in perspective. Don't forget the little guy. Don't forget the small business owners. Don't forget the people that can't afford the storefronts, can't afford the rental spaces in the strip malls. We can't afford the big fancy vehicles that are parked miles from our residents. We have to start somewhere, and I just want to make sure that you guys don't prohibit the chance for someone to develop a business income and have that liberty to do it out of their house in these garage-type, businesses. It's just something that I just want to make sure that you guys consider. I've seen a lot of other businesses. We have a lot of businesses in my neighborhood that we've got commercial vehicles, and I'm the Civic League president, and it's never been unsightly. I've got several businesses that use their residence as not as a parking lot, but as a place to park a vehicle as they commute to and from their place of business. And it's never been an issue with us. We don't have the huge displays. We don't have the exorbitant problems with vehicle advertisement. We just have simple advertised, whether commercial or non-commercial vehicles. It's never really been a problem for us as a community, but we do see the advantage of having those vehicles parked in the residence where people live and start up their business one day to eventually get a storefront, where they can contribute in the business world. So that's it. That's just my 2 cents. Appreciate the chance for you guys to speak.
Thank you. Next 2 speakers, please.
The next speaker is Lisa Sechtman, 2941 Crossings Drive, representing Self, to speak in opposition to public hearing item G, followed by Robert Rickner.
Good evening, young lady.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My concerns are with this ordinance in the ideas of safety and sanctuary. In 1970, the 5-man electrical band sang, "Sign, sign, everywhere sign," blocking out the scenery, breaking my mind. So, kind of aging myself here, but I'm sure some of you may remember that song. These lyrics remind us that signs are everywhere. In this age of technology, ads are an omnipresent reality. They invade our lives in more ways today than they did in the 70s. Just Google something or notice the changing multi-screen ads as you drive down the highway. In our zest to be welcoming to businesses in our community, there should be reasonable boundaries. Our residential neighborhoods should be our sanctuary from commercialization. Please vote no on this ordinance. I also have concerns about safety, and if you look at the handout that I passed out, there are a view of Munford Lane, and I was driving down Munford Lane the other day from Bruce Road, near the Crossings Park. A vehicle traveling in the opposite direction came out from behind a pod. The neighbors were moving. They had 2 pods. One was in the driveway, one was parked on Munford Lane across from the park. And as I was driving down, a car just came right out in front of me. We did miss each other, but I would hate to even imagine if that had been a child running out from behind that container. Please, we do not need large commercial vehicles in our neighborhoods. Please vote no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, young ladies. Nice to see you, as always. Next 2 speakers, please.
The next speaker is Robert Reichner.
Reichner, ma'am.
Reichner, thank you. 3429 Myers Farm Circle, representing Myers Farm Civic League, in opposition to public hearing item G, followed by Brian O'Donnell.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council, staff. My name is Robert Reichner, 3429 Myers Farm Circle. I represent the Myers Farm Civic League. Over 83 homes of families in the neighborhood dating as far back to 1983. Most of the people in our homes are original owners, and the neighborhood has not seen that much turnover. One reason that I'm opposed, and talking with other members of our Civic League, is that we have a large thoroughfare, Peppercorn Drive, that goes through our neighborhood. It bisects our community. And that is a area where this could, if this ordinance modification is written, is totally removed, the square footage limitation on commercial vehicles, it could open up a Pandora's box. And I'm all for reasonable considerations. Quite frankly, I think 4 square feet is a little too small, much like Mr. Ferguson says, something like 6 feet maybe could be better. So without removing the square footage, it might be better to modify that so as to keep Pandora's box closed, because I don't want Peppercorn to look like Las Vegas Strip. In terms of enforcement, now I already see trailers and other vehicles that may be outside of the 4 feet square minimum, and they're pretty unsightly when I walk my dog at evening. I'm a recent homeowner there. I just bought a home 2 years ago. I used to live in Norfolk in Ghent. So having a home in an area where it's secluded, it's a nice neighborhood, been there since the 80s, it's brought up. It's nice to go home to that and not see signs that you normally see on Interstate 664 or 64, things like that. So I am opposed to it. This is currently written to remove the square footage limitation. However, I do believe that there can be a reasonable accommodation. If that involves the council here modifying for business owners to get them more square footage reasonably, I think that they deserve that. So, as currently written, I'm opposed to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The last speaker is Brian O'Donnell, 3002 Myers Green, representing Myers Plantation.
I don't see Mr. O'Donnell. See here?
He was detained.
Okay, if he comes on in and we're still discussing, we'll give him that opportunity. You wanted to say something, Madam Attorney. What did you want to say? You spoke to me initially about this.
We have a substitute ordinance that is at your place there on the dais, and the purpose of the substitute ordinance, which is dated August 20th, is to correct a technical deficiency in Section 14705F.
Can you read that? What is it we're doing?
Yes, sir. It's Article 14, Section 14705F3C, and the verbiage would be vehicles on which the sign graphic attached or painted upon it which does not exceed an area of 4 square feet parked in commercial districts. And that would be an exception to the rule that vehicles could not park in any required yard next to a street.
So if I understand that correctly, talk to me in English.
Yes, sir. This is a prohibition against vehicles being parked in yards adjacent to public streets. And then there's a list of exceptions, and C is one of those exceptions. And right now it reads, the exception applies for any vehicle where the signage is not above 4 square feet. This amendment, we're going to add the words parked in commercial districts, and the purpose for that is to limit the exception to commercial districts, and therefore it won't be inconsistent with the amendments to 6-2003, which Council is considering tonight.
Thank you. Before I call Mr. Ike, and this is his ordinance he wanted to bring in the front, we've all received a lot of emails, and there appears to be, as one speaker said, a lot of confusion. This seems to be appropriate, at least for council, to have a work session to understand it, because I don't think it's not even council. I think council has a good idea what's happening here, but I think more importantly, the emails I'm getting, there seems to not be a clear understanding, even to the point where a company was totally against this ordinance, and then when you sent it, they just basically said, I won't put words in your mouth, go ahead. They basically, go ahead.
They did retract their opposition to the ordinance because they had misconstrued it.
Yeah, and my concern is, and I'll let Mr. Ike, because it's his ordinance, if we could have a work session, I think it would be helpful, not just for the council, but also for the public to hear more about this. But I'll go ahead and defer to you at this time, Mr. Ike.
Mr. Mayor, I happen to agree with you. Just hearing the speakers, there is some definite misinformation regarding what we're trying to do here. It's quite a simple issue. People are worried about vehicles parked on the street. Well, you can't park a commercial vehicle on a residential street. This simply controls the parking of a vehicle with more than 4 square feet of signage in a residential driveway or yard. Doesn't have anything to do with commercial vehicles on the street. Some of the pictures I've seen here, those vehicles parked there are they're in violation, and that would be enforced by the police department. I think a work session is in order. If we could move for a continuance until, Madam Clerk, what?
How long did you want to continue it for, Mr.
30
Ray?
days.
30 days? That would be the September 17th
So moved.
council meeting.
So moved.
Let me ask this, to be fair with Mr. Ike, can we have a work session, obviously,
yes.
Before the 17th?
That'd be fine.
Yes, we could put it on the 10th of September.
All right, Mr. Ike, go ahead and make your motion then, please.
I move that we have a work session on the 10th.
And continue it to the 17th.
The 17th.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. West. Members, please prepare to vote. Please vote. Please record the vote.
Motion to continue public hearing item G, TAZ 13-02, to the September 17th, 2013 council meeting with a work session on September the 10th is adopted by a 9-0 vote.
Thank you, Mr. Ike, for that. The next item of business is the city attorney. I understand this is going to be continued.
Yes, sir, there's been a request from staff to continue this to work out some bugs.
Oh, wait, I haven't done the consent agenda, have I? I turned the page one too many. I thank the vice mayor for saying, I know you want to move it, but there's another page. Madam Clerk, is there any citizens who wish to speak on agenda items only at this time?
No, Mayor, we have no speakers on the agenda
Can you
items.
please read the consent agenda at this time?
Yes, sir. The following items are on consent for council's consideration this evening. Under the city clerk's consent items, number 1, resignations, Hetty Heckler, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and Julian Jackson, Airport Authority. Under refunds, Patrick T. and Lisa M. Sullivan, $2,551.61. Jack A. and Linda S. Federoff, $3,655.20. And Angela D. and Eric P. O'Neill, $6,972. Under the city manager's consent, item 1, consideration of a request that city council authorize the city manager to approve a request for the addition of an unclassified part-time position to the personnel complement of the Department of Libraries and Research Services, requested by the Department of Libraries and Research Services. Those are the items on consent, Mayor.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion by Dr. DeCicco, second by Dr. Ward. Members, please prepare to vote. Please vote. Please record the vote.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented is adopted by a 9-0 vote.
Thank you. With that being said, city attorney item. You wanted to continue this, correct?
Yes, sir, we've had a request from staff for a continuance until September 24th.
With that being said, do we have to read that into the record, Madam Clerk?
It probably would be
Go
appropriate.
ahead, please.
Yes. A resolution recognizing pursuant to Chapter 35.1-25, Code of Virginia 1950 as amended, certain youth athletic associations and charitable nonprofit organizations or groups thereof as being part of the City of Chesapeake's recreational program for the purpose of exempting those associations and organizations or groups thereof when promoting or sponsoring concession stands at youth athletic activities from restaurant regulations.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to continue?
Motion to continue until September 24th.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Matheson. Members, please prepare to vote. Please vote. Please record the vote.
Motion to continue the resolution to the September 24th City Council meeting is adopted by a 9-0 vote.
Unfinished business at this time. Is there any? Yes, Ms. Ritter, please.
Since we didn't have council updates, I was asked by the Veterans Commission just to briefly announce their breakfast on September 21st. That information will be available on the city's website and also on Channel 48 or 40, whatever, if you have Verizon. Also, just like to, and I guess this is old business now, hope that somebody on the staff will get in touch with the folks who are down here on the sign ordinance, because I don't want it characterized at all that folks with concerns have misinformation. I think there's plenty of information that they brought forward that deserves due consideration and shouldn't be dismissed. So let's hope that we get in touch with them and make sure that their questions are answered and that their concerns be considered as perhaps another option or another ordinance that might come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Dr. Ward, did you want to say something?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I do want to, I don't know if this is new business, if we can have...
Well, let me do this before you go to new business. Is there any other unfinished business? Go ahead, Dr. Ward, new business, please.
We might need to, I'm not sure if a work session would be necessary, but I do want at some point to discuss our cable commission, and because we've just had considerable problems trying to get members, so it's something that we would like to consider to try to figure out what we can do. We only had 2 members last night, and getting a quorum, it's been a problem now for about a year, so we can at least discuss that, Mr. Mayor, either at a work session or the manager to figure out what we need to do.
Thank you. The Cable Commission's under Mr. Mark Cox?
Yes, and he has concerns, so he called me about this last night and said that there's something that council, we need to consider how we can change things and make things better or try to get members, and we've been struggling for about at least a year to try to get this done, and it's just not working. And I'm not sure what avenue to take at this point, and he's not either.
All right, with that being said, Mr. Craig?
Yes.
You put on your...
In reference to what Dr. Ward said, I think this is a great opportunity for us to take a look at all boards and commissions, see how many of them we actually need. The clerk's office and others spend a lot of effort trying to get people serve on boards and commissions that nobody wants to serve on. We set meetings, nobody shows up. There are half a dozen boards and commissions that people like to serve on. There's no problem getting it. But there are many others that should be reduced in size and some abolished. So I think starting with this would be a good time to do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, with that, I think Dr. Ward is asking more of if there's any ideas as opposed to being abolished, but I think your concern about looking at the various boards is commendable, and obviously I'll ask Dr. Dietrich to look into that. But to the staff, if Mr. Cox can send a memo to council with his ideas and thoughts, and also Dr. Ward is the liaison, certainly we can, first of all council members should promote a board or commission to bring them up, all council members. But Dr. Ward is asking for a work session. Since we just asked a work session for the sign ordinance for this new ordinance, if we can take some time maybe with Mr. Cox presenting that, along with maybe a member or two, those that seem to come, and we can maybe get a better idea of what needs or should be looked at. Mr. Craig, did you want to say something before I go to Dr. Ward?
I didn't understand that clearly. I do understand that we're going to look at the Cable TV Commission with advice from Mr. Cox. But are we also going to look at the other boards and commissions?
Yes, Dr. Dietrich, who has talked about it, and I appreciate it, and you certainly can work with him if you wish. That would be very helpful.
I'll be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Ward, please.
Oh, I was just going to also add that Mr. Craig is also the other liaison to the Cable Commission, so we do have those concerns. I do want to thank staff for the new book that we received recently with all the boards and all the commissions. That was well done, and that will give us some ample, at least literature to look at and consider what we need to do with respect to the other boards. And certainly the Cable Commission comes to mind, but there are others too that we do need to look at. So I thank you very much if we can have that work session.
Thank you. That will be done then the next, in September, the first week in September when we come back. There's a closed session, Madam Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion to conduct a closed session to discuss a prospective business and the expansion of 2 existing businesses where no previous announcement has been made of the business's interest in locating or expanding facilities in Chesapeake as permitted by Section 2.23711A5 of the Code of Virginia.
Thank you. A motion's on. Thank you, Dr. Dietrich. Dr. Ward seconded. Please prepare to vote. Please vote. Please record the vote.
Motion to conduct a closed session to discuss a prospective business and two expanding businesses is adopted by a 9-0 vote.
We'll all go back there at 8 o'clock. Thank you. 8 o'clock it is. Language so we can do it.
Yes, sir. Motion to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Mr. Craig? A motion, please. Thank you, Ms. Dyke, for the second.
Second.
They say I never look at that side. I look to that side. Members, please prepare to vote. Please vote. Please record the vote.
Motion to certify the closed session discussion is adopted by a 9-0 vote.
Thank you, Dr. Ward. Would you please dismiss us?
Yes, that is right. Dear Lord, we want to thank you for the deliberations that have taken place tonight, and rest assured we have made decisions that were in the best interest of our citizens of the entire city of Chesapeake. Now give us driving mercies as we return to our homes, and bless us, keep us safe until we meet again. These are the blessings we ask in the precious name of Jesus, who is the Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.